is Minnesota the answer to?
All right. Did you see there are 6 top 25 matchups this week?
It's a crazy week.
I mean, half the top 25 is going to be playing each other this week.
I know. I'm kind of excited. We'll touch on some of those games. Mike, since I see you're on, maybe I'll give you some betting tips. If you're wanting to know overs and unders and spreads and everything else, I'll throw a few at you. I didn't really have that planned, but we can still make that work. And I would have been right, John, even without you prompting it. One of the questions I already got, kind of impromptu since we haven't started yet, was who was the last team to win 3 straight national championships? And I knew it was Minnesota, but it's been like 100 years ago almost, so it doesn't count, Anyway, so are we live? We doing this? We're ready to go?
We're good to rock and roll.
All
I just
right.
got to make sure that we're secured. I don't know. Should I lock this door behind us or just leave it unlocked so somebody can come in and visit us?
People want to walk in. Maybe we'll have a guest or two on the show. That would be pretty cool.
We're up here at New Millennium Mortgage's office in DeMott, Indiana. If you want to swing in and get some ice cream from Who's Your Daddy. Although I don't know if they're open on Tuesdays.
I didn't even see where it was. I like ice cream.
Right down the
I
hall.
wanted to get. We may have to if you guys come in for a second. Of course, you won't be able to see this, but I'll post a note if I walk over to get ice cream.
Yeah, it's this door right here.
My
Walk
friends,
out that door and down the hallway, just like 3 doors, and we've got explains this right here.
Yeah, they know we like ice. I like ice cream.
I love ice cream.
So,
Jason, we're also on my YouTube channel.
Awesome.
This is going to go just like the last one. We're going to break it up in probably 3 segments. It's going to go raw and unedited. Hopefully, YouTube doesn't block one of the 3 videos. We are able to get 2 of them posted that they left up. The 3rd one, I don't know why it was taken down. I'm going to guess maybe because of this back here in the background. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know. I thought it was just a fire last time, though.
I know. Yeah, it was. YouTube can just quit being stupid.
I think YouTube was saying, hey, they're using a YouTube video in your YouTube video, and we're going to block you because we're dumb. I almost said a bad word.
No, that's okay.
See, I caught myself because we're a family-friendly show.
That's right.
And we know.
At least for now.
Well, yeah. We'll see what happens after this weekend with some of these scores. So, out here on Jason's live Facebook, we're going to be talking college football. It's going to be on my YouTube channel if you want to go back and watch it again. It's FFB from the 50 on YouTube. It's a fantasy football channel, but it's really all things football.
It may be before this chat's even over today, maybe 5 or 10 minutes of NASCAR even.
No, that's fine by me. We like sports.
We love it.
All right, so Jason, I got to start you off by a question that I have not prepped you off camera for.
Okay.
All right, so we did come out here, a month and a half, 2 months ago?
Yeah.
And we talked about the season. How has the actual season, as it has unfolded, we're 7 weeks in?
Yeah.
How is it compared to what you thought? I mean, what are your big surprises? And
I think we've
definitely befuddled.
We've definitely seen some things not shake out probably the way you thought. I mean, right away people kind of be like Vanderbilt beating Alabama, and I don't think anybody anticipated that. But the level of parity is like I said over and over again. It's better than it's ever been. So I would be lying if I said that I wasn't surprised that Vanderbilt beat Alabama, but I'm not surprised at just the level of craziness we've had, the closeness we've had. To date, this has been one of the most fun seasons I can remember. As we start to get towards crunch time, a couple more weeks. Matter of fact, I think Election Day is the first playoff ranking. So it'll be interesting to see because there's a lot of teams that I don't think anyone was talking about at the beginning of the season that are positioned right now to make a play for the playoffs.
So before we talk about those teams, the ones that are kind of rising from the bottom, the ones that nobody saw coming, let's talk about some of the teams that you're maybe a little surprised they're not performing any better than what they are. I mean, I know the SEC is a juggernaut. If you had told me before the season started that Bama was going to have 2 losses 7 weeks in, I'd have said I can see 1, but I don't think they're going to lose 2. Is that a surprise? Because to me, I didn't see that.
I think anytime you go from, I guess in our lifetime, I'm trying to think of that level of comparison, but it would be like Coach K retiring and the next guy coming in. Like the drawer can be full of talent. It doesn't mean it's going to click right away, right? I think some of it's discipline, some of it's some things there. It doesn't matter what the end result was. Vanderbilt's not a better football team than Alabama.
Right.
But for 4 quarters one day, they did. And I want to point kudos out to them for those that didn't watch the game or just read a few things. Like, Vanderbilt outplayed them for 4 quarters. Mm-hmm. It wasn't luck. They controlled the game. But, again, it's the old adage you hear, like, if they played 10 times, Alabama's going to win the other 9. Unfortunately, they didn't that day. So, again, I want to give props to them there. I think something we saw the last couple of years with some of the Saban teams in the big games were the penalties. And that's what bit them, not as bad in Vanderbilt, but definitely in the Tennessee game. Mm-hmm. So, and it was, officiating in that game was atrocious. So that's even one of those where I would go, there were probably some calls that got missed that may have hurt Alabama more than anything, but on the flip side, I'm never going to complain about that because it's not like they haven't gotten it over the years.
I was going to say it all balances out over time, right?
I looked at Alabama. I said at the beginning of the year, I thought 9-3 was something there, but if they went 10-2 or 11-1, I wouldn't be surprised. I didn't think their 9-3 would be a loss to Vanderbilt.
Right. I didn't see that one coming. All right, so for me, and I don't follow college football like you do, but I have followed it over the years. There's 2 additional teams that really kind of surprise me. Now, you can't expect the same level of success in Michigan's case. They lose Harbaugh, they lose a system. Very much like Bama, they lose a coach, they lose a system. It's not just, they still got talent, but the system matters. So seeing Michigan dropping out of the top 25 and seeing Oklahoma drop out of the top 25, 2 perennially very strong schools. Wow, didn't see that coming. What about you?
I think both of them are failing in the same area. I'm not surprised. I thought Oklahoma, at least offensively, would be a little better than they have been. You kind of thought Michigan would as well, but they just can't. I don't remember what the exact stat was, but heard something of the fact that, like, Michigan was underperforming behind, like, Kennesaw State in the passing game and stuff like that. They're just simply not able to move the ball. Their defense, I think, is still very good. Unfortunately, there's Illinois is playing good football. There are just some teams that maybe were a little better than we thought, and I think that's what's hurting Michigan some. In Oklahoma's case, I think they don't know what to do with their quarterback situation. It's funny, listening to the offseason, I don't know if it was a culture thing or whatnot, but, Brent Venables has got to be kicking himself for losing Dylan Gabriel to Oregon. And we see how that's playing out over there. I don't think there was any question on the quarterback situation, what he thought long-term was going to be it, and that's probably why Gabriel left. But it stinks for an Oklahoma team. I know a lot of OU fans, good dudes. There are teams that are just supposed to be good. Michigan and Oklahoma are a couple of those. So right. It's odd to see them not playing well.
All right, so any other big surprises, teams that you thought maybe they weren't ranked in the top 10, but we talked about some sleeper teams further down. Any more surprises, teams not performing as well? I know we talked about Washington, they were in the national title game, but you had warned us in the beginning of the season, they did, but they lost their head coach, they lost all this talent in the transfer portal. So that one really can't come as a surprise, but is there anything else that's surprising you? I got to tell you, I've been surprised at how many of these games that I thought would be won by double-digit points, Kentucky, Georgia, weren't. Mm-hmm. I mean, what kind of surprises are you seeing?
Well, I think the big thing is just the consistent amount of games that are staying close. You walk around, the Big 12 has been a very interesting conference to watch play this year because it just seems like they have a whole bunch of teams that are real close to one another. I don't know that the conference is very good. Mm-hmm. But they've got a bunch of I would say, above average teams. It's been fun watching them play. I think Clemson's another team for me that after that week 1 game against Georgia and then the week 2 game that was kind of blah, and now they've turned it on. So there's some teams like that after the second week I thought, oh man, what's going on? And they've kind of righted the ship. Let's just hit it while we're here. Indiana's been a phenomenal story so far. Yeah. They've been extremely fun to watch. I hate that their quarterback's out this week. I hope it's just a 1-week thing. I don't know that I would sit here and say I'm an Indiana football fan, but they've been a big pleasure to watch play this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, they're playing in the Big Ten. They've had some Big Ten matchups. They've already played UCLA, Maryland, Northwestern, and Nebraska. Now they got Washington, another team new to the Big Ten. You got Michigan State, Michigan coming up. They really don't have their first huge test if you're just looking at ranked teams until they play Ohio State. I mean, is it possible that they could actually run the gamut and only have one loss? And if they do only have one loss, and that's to Ohio State, how do they shape up?
I think right now there's a lot of schools that don't have the brand on the side of the helmet. Indiana, Iowa State, BYU, some of those that are undefeated or one loss ranked up in that area that I believe. I think earlier in the year we were talking about how many SEC, how many Big Ten schools are going to be in the playoffs, and I think that's still a question. But now I don't think you can dismiss, like, if IU wins 11 games, whether they go 11-1 and it's not good enough to get into the Big Ten championship game, or they go 11-1 and they get in and they lose, 11 wins, I believe, is going to get just about any of those teams into the playoffs.
Right.
So that's where I think right now, even though from a Big Ten standpoint it doesn't steal a spot from the table, I mean, again, 2 or 3 weeks ago, as well as they were playing, the talk was Oregon, Ohio State, and probably Penn State. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know how you can leave an 11-win Indiana team out. Same thing, and when you look over at the rest of the top 25, BYU and Iowa State are both undefeated right now, and they don't play each other in the regular season.
Yeah.
If by some chance they do get to 12-0 in a Big 12 championship game, I don't know how you leave the loser of that out.
Right.
So I think there was a talk like, well, maybe the ACC gets 2, or maybe the Big 12 gets 2. They probably both don't get 2. I think that's a very real possibility. I know we're kind of jumping around a lot, but flipping back to the ACC, Miami and Clemson don't play each other in the regular season. Clemson goes 11-1 and Miami goes undefeated. I don't know how you tell me that the loser of that game gets left out.
Right. And then you got teams like Boise,
mm-hmm.
who their only loss so far has been to Oregon. They only lost by 3 points. Oregon's number 1 right now. You look at Boise State's schedule the rest of the way out, there's not really a whole lot on their schedule that should stop them from winning out from here on out.
The UNLV game this week, I think, will be pretty entertaining. I think it'll be a fun one to watch. I think, too, when you look at that mix of schools in the midst there, I mean, Army and Navy are a great story. Neither
mm-hmm.
of them have been undefeated this far into the season in our lifetimes and probably even our parents' lifetimes. It's been a long time. Like, what happens, Army and Navy both play Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So now we're talking about a Notre Dame team who everyone's forgotten about the NIU game. It doesn't really matter anymore, not in this current playoff system. But you've got a bunch of teams now that are in the mix for 1 or 2 spots. I just don't think the way the playoffs set that you're going to see non-Power 5 schools, more than one, take a spot. That automatic bid's going to go to whoever. But man, oh man, I mean, what happens if Boise goes 12-1 and Army or Navy 1 happen to be at 11 or 12 wins? What do you do? Right. Do you leave one of them out? So it's going to be fun for the committee this year. Yeah,
it's not going to be easy, and that was the whole point of expanding it out, right? Was to try to, give everybody a shot. But so Navy plays Notre Dame this week. I mean, obviously we'll see. Notre Dame ends up losing to Navy. They probably, if Navy wins out, which I don't know that they will, or Army wins out, whatever. If they do that, that means Notre Dame's going to have 3 losses.
Yeah.
So they're out. So that's one team that I think in the preseason we thought stood a pretty good chance. They've already got 1 loss. That would put them at, a 3 loss. I don't know.
I think with the way things are starting to shape up, now things could just start to play out nice. Like, you look at the whole list of SEC schools, there's a lot of them there. But like this week, for example, I think it's LSU and A&M play. Mm-hmm. So they're going to start week. One of them is going to have a second loss. Now, to their point, A&M doesn't have a conference loss yet. Mm-hmm. I'd have to double check. I'm not sure if LSU, if their 1 loss was a conference loss or not.
I can afford you while you're talking.
The one thing we can't forget is that your record doesn't matter. If somehow you manage to get in the conference championship game and you win, you're getting in. So, but like Texas is playing Vandy this weekend. Not that I think will have season-long implications, but Vandy's going to lose that game.
Right.
I'm not saying they still can't have a good season, but they're not going to be Texas.
You just don't think they're going to pull off 2 miracles in the same year.
Ole Miss and Alabama are coming up, so there's going to start being some weeding out. Like, Alabama's not out of it, but they have no more margin for error. Ole Miss is in the same. They can't afford another
they've already
loss.
got 2. Yep.
So, and then I think for Georgia and Texas, I don't think that game last week really hurt them. I don't think Georgia's 1 loss really hurt them. I think they can both afford a second loss, and they're probably okay. But you still don't want to. It's like Tennessee, for example. I think finishing 10-2 is very reasonable for them now. They go to Georgia. I don't anticipate that's a game that they'll win. But I don't feel as comfortable about them at 10-2 making the playoff as I do Georgia or Texas.
Right. Pedigree right there. And then Tennessee's had good years. By the way, LSU, the loss that LSU had was to Big Ten USC.
That's right. They began. So LSU and A&M don't have a conference loss yet. I think Chance, if you're watching, he and I were talking earlier today, and he's like, there's a nightmare scenario where there could be like 6 SEC teams with 1 loss. Mm-hmm. Like, who goes the SEC championship game?
Exactly.
Fun breakdown.
Glad it's not us that have to
make
that choice.
Yeah. We can sit here on the side and do a show like this and badmouth people. So
looking at the SEC, like you said, I think it's so competitive. I wouldn't be surprised to see some of these teams end up getting 2 or 3 losses. They still have a gamut that they got to run. You look at the Big Ten, very similar. A lot of good teams. I mean, I didn't expect Indiana or Illinois to be in the top 25 this late in the season. I mean, they're good, but okay. Didn't expect that. Got to be honest. We're not even talking about teams in the Big Ten like USC that's not ranked right now for obvious reasons, but can still obviously put up a threat. They beat LSU week 1. I don't know. I could still see the Big Ten and the SEC squeaking out 2 to 3 teams.
Oh, I think they're both going to have 2 and 3. I think the big question is do they squeak the 4th in? So, kind of one thing I wanted to look at, and we'll kind of browse through here. I've got the top 25 up, but I kind of want to hit on the pretenders and the contenders from this list.
Yeah, let's do it.
And the obvious statement is obviously if you win the conference, you're going to get in, but really focusing in on the way teams are playing. Let's just kind of run through. In some of these, will go quicker than others. Like Oregon is a contender. They've got probably the best or second best win of the year. They beat a really good Ohio State team. I think, again, Oregon's in a position, too, where they can lose a game and it's not going to hurt them. But I think from a standpoint of being quality, they're good. So they're in a really good position to get in, and they're a good football team. Georgia's ranked second, pretty much the same story. I don't question their talent. Alabama played a phenomenal first half in that game. And the Williams kid might be one of the best players in the country. Hands down the reason they won that game. I mean, Georgia's very close to being undefeated. Let's not undersell that. Penn State, I don't know what to think of them yet. I don't know that I think they're a very good football team or like a top 3 team from that. I definitely think the schedule favors them. But they're going to Wisconsin this week. Wisconsin's been playing some good football. They figured it out. They've got Ohio State at home. I don't know that they can lose those 2 games back-to-back, but they should be favored in every game but Ohio State. So at 11-1, are they in? Yeah, they're going to make the playoffs. But I haven't seen from them consistently enough that makes me think they're a national championship team.
Well, and just looking at them, they really haven't been challenged. The only team that they faced that's pretty tough has been Illinois.
Yep.
Now, granted, they won that one 21-7. It wasn't like it was a super close game. They won by 2 touchdowns, but still, I'm with you on that. I don't. There's not enough on that litmus test to say, hey, this is a.
It was nice to see them get that win over USC a little bit for Ron Franklin, who just can't win that game. But you haven't convinced me enough yet that when he gets in a playoff schedule and has to win the game, that he'll get it done. So for right now, I'm going to say they're a playoff team, but I don't think they're a contender. Ohio State, they're as loaded as anybody. Dan Lanning made the right thing by kind of cheating to win that game. Who knows what happens if Ohio State gets another player or 2. But Ohio State, when you're talking about it, they do have to play Penn State. Indiana right now is looking pretty good. I think, again, Ohio State can afford 1 slip up. I don't think they can afford 2. But right now I would say I like Ohio State as an actual contender. Top 5 team Texas here, they're a good football team. They just... this was their first real test in a long time. And again, Georgia's a good football team. A few plays here and there, and it's not a 15-point loss. But I think Texas is in pretty good shape. They do have some games that they've got to worry about a little bit coming up on the schedule. I don't think it's a gimme that they get through at 11-1. But on the flip side, the Vanderbilt game this week, Florida's playing better. Again, not a real threat. At Arkansas, I think it's a game that they're going to have to show up and play. But then they've got A&M at the end of the season. So I think when you kind of look at that schedule, there's a trap game in Arkansas. And if A&M keeps playing well, again, I don't think it hurts them to lose that game. So we're going to say contender for Texas. Miami, wow. Any of my Miami buds that are watching, I'm sorry for where this is going. I mean, they're a good football team, yes. the ACC's bailing them out week in and week out. They should have at least one loss and probably two. I think when it comes down to it, if they do keep winning, it's just going to be a case of the ACC's kind of hot garbage. I think if they get in the playoffs, I mean, they may get lucky with a first-round bye or a comfortable first game against a Boise State, which wouldn't be a cakewalk. But once they get into that gauntlet of those other teams I've been talking about, they're going to get freight trained.
Well, here's a good, if you want to really put it in perspective, if you took Miami out of the ACC and you put them in the SEC or the Big Ten, would they be 7-0 right now?
No, I don't think they would be.
Go.
So next on the list is Tennessee. It's obviously a hard for me to maybe step back. I think if they figure the offense back out, they're definitely a contender. I don't know what's happened the last 2 or 3 weeks. One thing I did see that looked like was the big swing in the second half of the Alabama game. And, I'm chatting with buddies, and it's like, why isn't he letting Nico run the ball? Because that's going to open it back up. We were talking, complaining. He's just another Joe Milton. He's overthrowing everybody. I think maybe they figured something out in the second half of that game. They got a bye week. If the offense does get back to where it was in the first month of the season, they're absolutely a contender. But if they're not as good as that defense is, it's going to bite them. Yep. LSU, again, we're kind of scrolling down. They're the one team I don't know what to think about.
I'll give you my opinion.
Yeah,
I think they're pretenders. I don't see them being for real.
Yeah,
I think the game against USC really kind of exposed them for what they were. They beat Ole Miss, and in our pick'em that we do, they actually had Ole Miss.
Yeah.
I don't trust Brian Kelly to begin with. I don't trust his choices, especially in the big games. And he's got some big ones coming up. Have you looked at their schedule?
Yeah.
They got 3
What do you got going on there? Let's pull that up. Let's chat. Because they got a big one this week.
Yep, they got A&M.
And here's the thing for them. I think the pool of guys there, you can say this about a lot of teams, but it's a good football team. Mm-hmm. They're there. And I'll say the same thing. That first week or two of the season, there's a lot of teams I could probably pick apart and go, how'd you do that? I dismiss that. You're getting out, you're getting on the field. USC played a good game. LSU just didn't play good enough. Yeah. But I wouldn't dismiss it. Same thing. The second week of the season, Notre Dame, NIU. I don't think that defines who Notre Dame was. If that game's in week 5 or 6, I'm probably like, whoa, let's take a step back here. But
you got to find your footing. You got to find your identity early. I get that. But now, and again, it's not like these games that they've won have been huge blowouts. You look at what they did against South Carolina. They only won by 3 points.
Yep.
They lost to USC. They play Ole Miss. Yes, they won. It was a close one, another 3-point game. But now they got back-to-back Texas A&M and Alabama.
We'll get a good idea of what they are the next 2 weeks.
That'll show. Because here's the thing. I don't think that they'll have any problems dispatching Florida. Vanderbilt, we already know, can be a problem for teams. Will they beat them? I can't say that. But I could honestly see Oklahoma being a trap game for them at the end. Now, if that becomes the case, they're going to have 3 losses.
Yeah,
and that would not surprise me.
If they split their next 2, 10-2, I think the committee's going to like that brand. But kind of similar to a Miami or even a Penn State, I think if they get in the playoffs, it's
thanks, Tom.
Yeah, it's not going anywhere else. What Tom have to say?
Yeah, not trusting Brian Kelly will get you far in life.
Definitely. But I'm going to say the same thing I said however many years ago. I'm not saying Brian Kelly will win a national championship at LSU, but he's a better head coach than the last 2 that did.
He's going to slip and fall on a banana and somehow figure it out.
When Ed Ogeron and the guy that likes to eat grass, I've already forgotten. If they win a national championship there, he's better than they are. But whether they do or not, we'll keep running here a little bit and try to hit on some other teams. Clemson, I like what I've seen the last month and a half. I think they're a good football team. I think their schedule, you kind of got it pulled up. Louisville's a good team, not a great team. They play Pitt later in the season. I'm going to be honest, I don't think Pitt's a great football team. And obviously the voters don't either because they're an undefeated team and they're barely ranked in the top 20.
So they're number 19.
Yeah. South Carolina is a team that has played good ball. So again, at the end of the season, that could be a rough game. But if they go 10-2 and again, I think they're going to win the ACC. I think they could cause some problems. I don't know that I would say they're a top 14, but they're good. Iowa State, we're rolling through. I don't think they're a good football team. I mean, they're an okay team. It's kudos
where they're at.
Kudos to them for the games they've won because you still have to win. Ask Tennessee. They couldn't beat Arkansas. Ask Go down through the rankings of these teams that have lost. Again, we just mentioned LSU. They dropped a game. So kudos for Iowa State for that. Kudos to BYU for that. But do I think that they're really good football teams? No. I mean, one of those two teams is probably getting into the playoffs and going to get boat raced. Notre Dame, I think if they're clicking, they're good. Right now, I don't trust them. A pretender. IU, we're scrolling down through. They're the one team I don't know yet. Like, Cignetti's amazing.
He's
like,
a great coach.
All he does is win. Ask him. So I think anytime you have a team, and he did a great job in the portal. Like, I think a lot of people have this misconception that, hey, this was last year's IU team and he's just got some things rolling. No, he's got a whole different group of talent in there. I do think they're a good football team, and I think when you can score a lot of points, looking back at some teams in the past, again, I'm not comparing them to Joe Burrow and LSU, but like the styles of offense of them, Tennessee a couple years ago, you don't have to have a great defense. Mm-hmm. So until the Ohio State game in a couple weeks will be interesting for them, especially if O'Rourke's back, to see what they can do against a top-level team. Because I'm going to be honest, the Nebraska game was impressive. Yeah. Nebraska may not be a top 25 team, but they're not a bad team, and they took them to the woodshed.
At one point, they were a top 25
team.
So
they were.
We can't forget that.
Like, I would say right now, I like what I see out of Indiana. I'm going to label them like a contender with the asterisk on mm-hmm. what's the quarterback play look like.
Right.
Alabama, that switch can be flipped. That's the only thing I'll say for them. Obviously, the last 3 weeks have not been great, but if the mistakes go away, there's no question that Kalen DeBoer can coach. But right now, I'm not going to call him a contender. We're getting pretty close to outside the top 25. Kansas State, I think they're going to have an opportunity to be in that play. They did lose to BYU. They're going to need a little bit of help, but I do think they're a good football team. I don't think they're a top 4 team. Boise, kind of the same thing. I think they're a playoff contender, but a long-term contender, no. Ole Miss is probably my still kind of weird wild card. The talent's there. They're not out of it yet, but they have zero margin for error. They can't. Right. So that's
they've already got the 2 losses. They got to win out.
And then now you're kind of down. Pitt, they're a pretender. I'm not going to dive into it. Illinois is having a great season, but they're not a contender. Missouri, what a joke. SMU, I think, has an opportunity. I don't think they have one conference loss or no conference losses. I'll let you check real quick, but they've been playing really good football. They lost early to BYU. So,
BYU, who we skipped.
So no conference losses. But again, Army, Navy. Again, I think maybe you see one of them slip in as an at-large. But I think there are a lot of teams in the top 10 that aren't capable. Right now, I would say there's probably 4 or 5 that I look at and go, this is where your national champion is going to come from.
Yeah, and I would say that looking at some of these teams, and I'm just being honest, you look at some of them like SMU, Army, Navy, Vandy. I would even throw Missouri in there. I told you in the beginning of the season when we did the first video, I wasn't sold on Missouri. Illinois, you look at these teams, and probably, I hate to say this, probably to a pretty great extent, Indiana. The goal, I mean, if they miss the playoffs, but they get a good bowl game, they just got to consider it a good season.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what they are.
I think there's been a lot of fluff. So, again, I root for a team that's kind of on the border. And after the NC State game, all of a sudden it was like, oh, maybe playoffs for Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And, I'm excited, but I kind of want to pump the brakes and go, I don't think that's realistic yet. And the same thing you said, I think maybe with some teams coming in, I think the way Missouri finished the season last year, their thoughts were playoffs or bust. Mm-hmm. Ole Miss for sure, playoffs or bust. For IU, obviously 5 weeks ago, there was no thought of that. Now it's looking at the schedule, it's a realistic talk.
Hey,
but
why not? Why not?
I think if Indiana wins 9 or 10 games, I don't think there should be disappointment from the IU fans. I think they should be like, oh my gosh, we won 9 or 10 games. What's he going to do next year? Mm-hmm. So I think it's needing to settle down a little bit with unrealistic expectations, unless you're a fan of a Texas, Ohio State, Alabama. There's really only a few schools that should be playoffs or bust.
Right, and that's not to say. Listen, we're not saying that it can't happen. You look at Boise State, from the run that they went on. What was that, like a decade ago? Beating Oklahoma. The craziness that ensued. The trick plays, the Statue of Liberty, listen, it can happen. you just got to get to the playoffs, right? And then anything can happen. A key injury to a certain player, that's great. But, yeah, having realistic expectations is huge. For some of these teams, I can go through here and I can tell you my top 12 is not indicative of the top 12 in either the AP or the coaches poll. But they probably know more than I do. But, I would look at this and be, I don't see the ACC getting 2 teams in. I really don't. I think either Miami or Clemson will get in. I don't think both will.
Yeah.
I just don't. I think there's a recognition that there's a lot of weakness there. If I had to pick, and I'm just being honest, between, let's say Boise State, I'm going to use them for an example. They're just one example. There's others out there. Boise State wins out the rest of the way, and the only loss that they have in the regular season is to number 1 Oregon by 3 points. I'm going to look at that and be like, okay, I'm going to probably give them the nod because they played the best team in the land as of right now, and they only lost by a field goal versus a team that we can look at and recognize, hey, the ACC is down.
Yeah.
I would rather give the benefit of the doubt to a team like that has played. And a part of this is also based upon what happened last year. I can't deny that that's a part of it. We see what happens if you don't make.
Yeah.
You don't reach the goal on everybody. All of a sudden, you get a bowl game and nobody's playing anymore. That's embarrassing.
I think one thing to highlight there. I think Boise State's in their own driver's seat because right now they will be the highest ranked Group of 5 champ. Mm-hmm. If Boise State wins out, they're in, and they're not going to take an at-large. So I think some of the things to look at is where do some of these other schools finish? Again, I'm trying to project best case scenario. If you've got an undefeated Miami and 11-1 Clemson, they're both getting in. I just think that's the way it's going to go. But Miami, it's going to be hard for them to not trip up. But let's spin gears a little bit and let's look at some of the schedule for this week. So for some of you that are big into the games, if you're still listening, I'm going to pick out a couple, maybe throw some things your way if you're kind of wondering what to look at. So let's hop on down. Thursday we've got I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing here. But where'd that go? I just had it. Okay, here we go. So Thursday I was right. Syracuse and Pitt play. I've already said that I'm not very high on Pitt. The loss to Stanford that Syracuse had was a little weird, but I like them to show up and play well in this game. Right now, Pitt's a 6-point favorite. I would take Syracuse. I would take them outright, but I definitely think they're going to cover. But I think that's going to be a fun game, and I do think that'll be a good test for Pitt. I still think if they win, you're not going to sell me that they're a great team, but that's a fun game coming up this week. Boise State and UNLV on Friday night.
This one could have big ramifications.
Should be a fun game to watch. Yep, the spread's a lot closer than I thought it would be, especially with some of the things going on. But definitely going to be a fun game to watch. The problem is it's a 10:30 game at night. I don't stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning to watch stuff anymore. But Ashton Gentry's a beast. He should be the top guy for the Heisman right now. He's got 17 touchdowns. I know that's not tops because I know Dylan Sampson at Tennessee also has 17 touchdowns. But with that said, he's phenomenal. So that would be one of those that whether I stay up and watch the whole game or not, the highlights of that will be fun. I would take Boise, and I'd take they're going to cover that 3 points. So if you're talking about that. Another kind of fun game is Louisville at Boston College. BC's kind of been an up and down team. Louisville has too. Louisville is a 7.5 point favorite on the road. I like BC to cover that. So we're just hitting on some fun games. But now let's get into some of the Saturday games, some of the ranked games. Notre Dame and Navy. I think this is going to be a fun game to watch. Getting a chance to see a couple styles of football. This isn't the traditional Navy team we've had in the last few years. I think one or two that beat Notre Dame, but I think this will be a fun game. I think a 12.5 point line for Notre Dame's pretty big. I expect them to win, but I don't know. Almost 2 touchdowns seems like a lot. So I would take Notre Dame to win, but I'd take Navy to cover. So having a little fun there.
There you go.
Indiana at Washington. I won't be surprised if this line doesn't come down a little bit more. We already know work isn't planned. They're still a 6.5 point favorite. If Tavon Jackson plays well, we've seen glimpses of that. He's an incredibly talented athlete. They'll cover the 6.5. Any of these others that jump out, I'm going to kind of scroll down. We got Oregon at Illinois. 21.5 is a lot of points. But what we have seen so far this year, oddly enough, are those big travel distances. Those differences
Right.
are starting to come into play. Now, it typically means a little more when you're coming from the West Coast and you're kicking off at noon or whatever. But, that's good. That's a pretty long mid-season flight for Illinois. I won't be surprised if Oregon covers that game. I think it could be tight in the first half. So, but I think they're going to wear Illinois out.
So help me understand this, though, because I'm looking at the spread for the Missouri-Alabama game.
Okay.
So we have 15 versus number 21. Doesn't 13.5 seem like an awfully big spread for teams that are considered so similar in the rankings?
I think it does. I think one thing with Vegas, and they're probably just going to keep doing it, is I think there's still this expectation of that Alabama's going to flip the switch. I also think, too, Missouri's looked like garbage the last couple weeks.
They have.
So,
I don't trust them.
Alabama offensively, again, Tennessee's got a good defense. I'm not surprised that the score was what it was. But on the flip side, too, Alabama left probably 14, 17 points on the board. They can score points. It's going to depend on Brady Cook and everything out in Missouri. But I don't think it's big because I think the thought is Missouri's kind of not playing good ball. It's Alabama. They're going to turn it on. I think it's probably a sucker bet for Vegas, too.
All right, so also you've got Central Florida, a 3-4 team that's actually favored over 11th ranked undefeated BYU.
I think UCF's getting some love because of how well they played in some of their losses. They probably should have beat Iowa State last week. They didn't. Close game to Cincinnati, close game to Florida. Really the only loss that they got handled, although Florida game really wasn't as close as it looked. But Colorado kind of took them to the woodshed. I don't think there's a whole lot of trust in BYU yet.
It just seems odd that you literally have a 4-loss team favored over an undefeated 11th ranked team, and
in my pick'ems this week, I'm gonna take BYU to stay undefeated. So obviously that they're gonna cover that right there. So let's kind of scroll down let's highlight a couple other games in here. Oklahoma, Ole Miss. Ole Miss needs to come out and make a statement. Oklahoma absolutely has to find something. If Brent Venables isn't on the hot seat yet, it's getting warm. And Ole Miss is a 20-point favorite in that game. If Oklahoma can't find a way to move the ball, that game could be uglier than 20. Sorry, Oklahoma fans that are listening. I hope that's not the case. I do enjoy seeing Lane Kiffin take a loss here and there, but I don't think that game is setting up very well right now for Oklahoma. Kind of scroll back down through here. We had several ranked games. I know I'm missing a couple. So Texas, Vanderbilt. 18.5-point spread. I kind of feel like maybe Texas is going to come out a little hungry this week after that loss.
A little angry.
Yeah, so
played a little angry.
And Vanderbilt thinks they're all this and that right now. I think Texas is going to punch them in the face, and I think that's going to be an ugly game.
Yeah, it's kind of the way I feel about the Ohio State-Nebraska game. Yes, Nebraska has a good team, but Ohio State's got to be furious. I mean, they're 25.5-point favorites.
Yep.
So, I mean,
kind of scroll down. We got LSU and A&M. I'm actually looking forward to this game because A&M's been a little fun to watch the last few weeks. LSU, again, I think they're playing better ball. A&M's a 2.5-point favorite at home. I really don't know what to think of that game. If I had to pick right now, I would probably take A&M just because it's there. But
and because Brian Kelly, yeah, I'm saying it, not Jason.
But if you're willing to take a flyer, I could see LSU winning that on a last second field goal.
Okay,
a close one. If it's over 45 yards, you already know how I feel about kickers, so I don't think that's going anywhere. Another game that I think will be interesting to see. So I hate how Kansas has fallen apart this year. Like I did not expect that team to just dive. Like I'm not surprised that maybe they're not ranked, but it's Kansas State. So will they show up to play? Kansas State's a good football team. They're only lost to undefeated BYU. So I like Kansas to show up and play with some heart this week. It's a 10-point spread. Maybe they cover. I don't know that you look at the end of the game and go, oh, it was close, but I could see it being like a 14, 17-point swap back and forth, but I do expect Kansas State to win that game. Now, one more fun one for this week. Duke's been playing some pretty good football this year.
Yeah, they're 6-1.
6-1. They got SMU coming to town, who is also 6-1. I don't know. I think this game may be a little closer than people expect. It's 11.5-point spread. I think Duke has the ability to control. I think there's a lot of flashbacks to old SMU before they got the band hammer years and years ago, but I like Duke to cover in this one. So,
yep. Agreed.
Let's flip back over. So I think I only had one question, but I do kind of want to hit on it. Earlier today, Benny asked me what I thought about Oklahoma and if I thought that they could make it in this new SEC. I absolutely think they can. I think a couple things for Oklahoma come down to timing. I think if they could get a do-over and Lincoln Riley could get a do-over, knowing what all of them do now, I think everybody would be a lot happier if he was still there.
Yeah.
I think the new look NIL, the new look transfer portal, the money that Texas just has to throw around, a coach of the mentality like for Sarkisian, I think that's why Texas is very quickly grafted on and they're in a good spot. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma is still Oklahoma, though. I don't know if Venables is going to be your long-term guy, but they can absolutely be successful in the SEC. I don't think it's going to happen in the next couple of years. I think they're going to have to make a decision on what they want to do there. If he's the guy, then I definitely think there's going to have to be a conversation with him like, you need to go find an offensive-minded guy. I've had a few text messages here. I'll get back to you in a second, Dustin. I've had several messages over the last few weeks as like, oh, you know, are they going to come dump a whole lot of money and try to go get Josh Heupel? I don't know, and I don't think so. I think getting fired once by your alma mater and having a good thing going, and let's face it, I mean, Tennessee can give Heupel whatever money he wants. I don't think that's going to be Oklahoma's long-term solution, but they're definitely going to have to figure out a way to score a lot of points. I think conferences around, 5-10 years ago, there was a lot of like, well, SEC, they're the defensive guys, and you'd have a few schools. It's changed. They scored a lot of points there now. I don't think you're going to come in and win a national championship if you're only scoring 24 points a game.
Yeah, and I think that mentality, I think the one thing Oklahoma has to do that Texas, I feel like, did a little bit quicker than Oklahoma when they made the transition was focused on a more well-rounded offense and defense. They come from the Big 12. The running joke in the Big 12 was always they play offense, but they don't play defense.
Yeah.
Right? Texas has figured out in the SEC you got to do both. Oklahoma's not quite there yet. I feel like they can put up their points. They don't stop anybody.
Yeah.
It's just like bleeding. All right, so Dustin, you asked if Navy will cover. It is a big spread.
Yeah. So the full disclaimer here is you guys are betting with your own stuff. If all of my predictions are wrong, it's on your own. I don't want to see people outside my house with pitchforks and everything. But yeah, 12.5 points is a lot. Notre Dame's playing better than they were, I think, at the beginning of the season. But I think Navy's a good football team. So I think for them to cover is very reasonable. So I would say yes. I would take Notre Dame to win, but I like Navy to cover.
There you go. All right, what else you got?
I don't have a whole lot else. I didn't know if anybody else was kind of hitting there. I think I didn't even bring them because I think they were so bad. I think my early playoff predictions were in a pretty rough shape. But I do kind of want to roll in here and look at something else here real quick.
While you're doing that, just want to remind everybody that the reason you said that your playoff predictions were pretty bad. At least you didn't have Florida State ranked number 10 in the preseason poll.
How has he not been fired yet? So, hey, Florida State fans, if you're watching this, give me some of your feedback. Because, I like Norvell. And really, it's kind of the same thing with Florida. I like Billy Napier. I mean, they seem to be relatively decent dudes, but, yeah, at least Florida's sort of trending in the right direction. I think Florida State, is it you just don't fire him because you don't know what else to do yet? I mean, do you think, it's maybe next year you can turn it around? I don't know what the thought process is there.
Yeah, I don't either. But they're 1-6. They started the season ranked number 10. So, you're talking about Kansas. That's another team that we had higher expectations for. Yeah, Brian, it really was. I can't repeat what you said because I'm doing a YouTube video here at the same time, but you're not wrong.
Yeah, looking at some comments there. Yeah, I think, just so you know, Dustin, I heard earlier today that they thought Rourke would be back next week. So it looked like the thumb progression was coming pretty well, that it might only be a 1-week thing. I would hope the way they've been playing that they can win this week without him. But I think one thing to keep in mind is, even if they don't, it doesn't mean anything. IU's in a place where they can afford a loss, especially if by some chance they were to come back with him and beat Ohio State. So I think right now the big thing is getting them healthy and playing a good game of football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, be competitive out there. Don't just roll over. Show that you still got some fight.
Yep.
All right.
So I don't have anybody else chiming in here. Like if I saw my brother just hopped on, looking to see. I'm just kind of checking here to see if I've gotten any more other questions or comments. But I do want to kind of throw in now, and I know this isn't going to be an absolutely bold prediction, but like I'm going to say right now, when you look at your top 5, it's Oregon, Georgia, Penn State third, Ohio State, and Texas. I'm going to take Penn State out. But Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State, or Texas, one of those 4 teams is going to win the national championship this year. I do not think at this point in the season there is anybody outside the top 5, and then also getting rid of Penn State, that has been as consistent of the 4 teams that I've just stated. And again, I don't think that's a wild thing, but week 8 or whatever we're on, with most teams having played their 7 games, the national champ is going to come from one of those 2 Big Ten or SEC, or one of those 4 Big Ten or SEC schools.
All right, go down to the comment section, either here on Facebook Live on Jason's, or out on the YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, go down to the comment section. Predict, and we won't say, we'll do what you did, Jason. You don't have to pick the champ, but go out there and narrow it down to your top 4. Yeah. Which 4 teams do you think the national title is going to come from? Again, we're not even making it 2. We're not telling you, hey, right now you have to say Oregon's going to win. 4 teams. Go down in the comment section. Let us know who you got.
So let's Signetti for president. Amen. We'll shift gears a little bit here, literally with NASCAR. I always like to talk about this a little bit, so I know you've kind of gotten into it a little bit. Mm-hmm. So we're coming down to crunch time in that. So if you like some racing, we'll talk real quick here for a minute. What I want to know is, like, were you aware last week of the disqualification? So Alex Bowman managed to finish high enough to make the round of 8. And then he failed post-race inspection, and so he dropped out, and Joey Logano got in. Were you aware of all that went on?
I was not.
So for those of you that are watching, you probably know what's going on. But like the cake hit when that happened, and then Joey Logano wins the next week, and now he's in the Final 4. So you gotta love NASCAR. You had a guy that didn't make the final round of 8, got in over disqualification, and then won the first race to lock himself into the Final 4. So for those of you NASCAR guys that are in, looking at the next few weeks, I think one thing that I really enjoyed from watching this week, like, there's a lot of guys I don't like. I do not like Joey Logano. I'm not a fan. Can't stand Denny Hamlin. But I do like to see when teammates within an organization work well. And at the end of the race this past week, there was some fuel mileage and some stuff that come into play. Logano was out front. Ryan Blaney, who had a good car, got caught up in an earlier wreck, was a lap or 2 down, and was pushing and drafting and not egregiously, but was blocking a little bit, and it allowed Logano to get in. So I, as a Blaney fan, I'm hoping that Logano returns the favor. We've seen some pretty close stuff in there. Chase Elliott, just unfortunately wrong place, wrong time. Blaney as well. Those 2 guys are a lot of points out with 2 more races to get in. So I'm going to jump out here. Larson's going to find a way to get in. Logano's in. Christopher Bell's won all season. But I'm going to say it. Ryan Blaney's going to find a win in the next 2 weeks and get in. So I think you're going to be looking at Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson, Joey Logano, and Ryan Blaney in the Final 4 going in the final race of the season. Mm-hmm. So...
All right, we have one thing we talked about off camera. We got to talk about it on camera.
Okay, maybe.
All right, so we had a tragedy in the family. I don't want to get into who it happened to or whatever, but I will say that I have family that lives in Sarasota, Florida, and their house was devastated by Hurricane Milton. So last week, part of the reason I haven't kept up with sports over the last week, I was down in Florida helping put on at least a temporary roof until we can get down there and do more work. But there's a tragedy on top of a tragedy. So looking at the weather down there, I'm a weather guy. Looking at the weather down there, the temperatures all week were supposed to be in the high 80s. They were. I've got skin peeling. I got burned. I got fried. But unfortunately, we did not hit those high 80 temperatures until we got well down into the peninsula of Florida. So we stopped in southern Georgia, just north of Valdosta, at a gas station, had a Denny's for breakfast, and get out of the truck. It's 40 degrees. I've got T-shirt and shorts. Absolutely freezing inside. I had to do something that I'm very ashamed of, Jason. I had to buy a Georgia Bulldog sweatshirt.
So this is where we're coming back to you for the 75 of you that are watching. I may have exaggerated that number a little bit. I feel terrible that my good buddy Dan here had to touch anything that said Georgia on it.
Not proud.
Like, I even asked him, like, why didn't you buy a Georgia Tech shirt? They didn't have it. Like, what about the local high school? They didn't have it. Like, it was that or like a $400 pair of Carhartt. So I understood that. But like, what I want to do is for you, for our Facebook, for our YouTube viewers, I want to get Dan his $40 back. So I have thrown my Venmo down in here. But it's not just going to be as simple as that. We're going to give him his $40. If we can raise $40, I'm going to take that sweatshirt and we're going to burn it. We're going to do a live stream of us burning that filthy Georgia Bulldogs sweatshirt. And so I'm hoping you, the community, can help out, because he was going to help out in a real tragedy, was going down to do some stuff with the hurricanes that come through, and the weather temperature-wise didn't coordinate, and he had to put on something Georgia. So let's rally around him. I'm going to throw in a few bucks for this. If like 5 or 6 of you knock out $7-8, oh, my brother dropped in here. But anyways, if you guys can top in $6, $7, $8, we can recoup Dan his costs. And we can do something really fun on camera involving burning a Georgia shirt. Although I'm not sure if that goes against Facebook's community standards. Might have to do that on Twitch.
I think we could do it on Facebook.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
We just have to make sure there's not a burn ban, because we're in the middle of a drought across Northwest Indiana.
I don't want to set the neighbor's cornfield on fire.
Emily's got a question for it.
Erica's got a question. So if you can't see it, there's this amazing shirt I owed my daughter. Was going to do something with it. So I got this for Christmas. Thank you, Emily. Chad had the same for his national championship. It's like he says it's going to come from that for, so good for him. Chad, I know you can spare $6 or $7 to the Make-A-Wish or the Sarah McLaughlin.
Make the Georgia go away.
If you can hear her singing in the background about the animals and stuff in the shelters, we're doing that for Dan to get him his few bucks
the arms
back.
of the angels.
We need to right a wrong, right?
Not my proudest moment, Jason. Not my proudest moment.
If this was Deadpool, we could go back in time, go through the multiverse, and we would get him a different shirt. But
I would have just packed differently, but that's unfortunately. I wasn't expecting to have to stop there.
So let's hit this real quick for those that might watch, and we'll adjust the schedule. But what I want to do is get back together here in a couple weeks, and maybe, I don't know, are you like a big election guy? Will you be glued to the TV that night, or will you need a reprieve?
I always need a reprieve.
So maybe we can kind of time a live cast stream when they drop the first thing. Maybe we can be on without them in the background, because that would be copyright problems. But maybe we can do a show that night talking a little bit about the first rankings that just came out, and then that way some of you don't have to watch the mess that is our political climate.
Give some brevity to a night that would probably need it.
Yeah, that's right. I would agree. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. It's been fun. We're going to zip around and shut a few things off. So, always a pleasure.
If you're watching on YouTube, go out, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, go down to the comment section. Let us know who your Final Four teams in the playoffs are going to be, or at least the Final Four that the champion is going to come from. Anything else you want to go down there, let us know what we got right. Let us know what we got wrong.
Or if there's just something next time we meet you want to have us talk about, like throw it in there and we'll get it on here.
100%.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
No, that'll do it for me.
All right. Me too.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.
All right. Take care.